Misinterpretations of Section 121. It's time for this government to fix it.
The member knows that I appreciate all good Nova Scotia products, of course. Statements by members, déclaration de député. Oh, and by the way, the member will have 3 minutes remaining in his speech when the House resumes after question period. L'honorable député de Repentigny.
The honourable member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, Quebec City is currently welcoming experts from forestry countries around the world in order to discuss the challenge of wood as a renewable resource. Quebec is a pioneer in this field. They've already adopted a wood charter which requires entrepreneurs to assess the use of wood in publicly funded projects. Our businesses can benefit from this to develop secondary and tertiary processing products. Furthermore, as wood products are substitutes for power-hungry products like steel, the use of wood represents a tangible way to reduce greenhouse gases emissions. The government should be inspired by this and create a federal wood charter as the Bloc has proposed. This is a golden opportunity to diversify the forestry industry while contributing to climate change, killing two birds with one stone. The honourable member for Thérèse de Blainville. Mr. Speaker, on June the 3rd, more than 350 people met in order to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the Stella Galler at Sainte-Thérèse de Blainville. I'm pleased to emphasize the particular work done by Mr. Alain Martineau, the director of the Caisse des Jardins de l'Envolée. He won the Michel Boeck Prize for his social involvement and professional achievements. This prize was created in honor of an outstanding businesswoman from our region. She is the founder of the Chamber of Commerce of Thérèse de Blainville. I'd like to also congratulate Mr. Pierre Chartrand, who received the Jean-Marc Boisvert Prize, recognizing his career and remarkable social involvement. I also want to congratulate all of the award winners at the gala and to recognize their talent, dynamism, and excellence of the business community of the MRC of Sainte-Thérèse de Blainville. Bravo.
Welcome, Unionville.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to congratulate the Unionville Milk and Soccer Club in my riding, which this year celebrates its 40th anniversary. The UMSC is a volunteer-based non-profit community organization that runs soccer programs for all ages, from toddlers to senior players. The club also has competitive and recreational outdoor and indoor soccer leagues for all to enjoy, including a program for players with special needs. The UMSC relies on hundreds of volunteers who dedicate their time and energy for thousands of players to enjoy the health benefits of sports. And nothing is more praiseworthy than that. To the Unionville Milk and Soccer Club, I hope your next 40 years are as successful as the past 40 years. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Steveston, Richmond East.
Mr. Speaker, on Friday, May 13th in Richmond, I had the honour of joining friends for a communal Shabbat dinner. That night, I enjoyed inspiring conversation, a delicious meal, and the warmth of Jewish tradition. Shabbat is Judaism's day of rest, the seventh day of the week. It's an opportunity for families and friends to come together in conversation and in reflection. Shabbat begins with the lighting of candles, followed by the blessing of children, prayers of thanks for the Shabbat and for the Challah, after which the meal is served. Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank my hosts and the Jewish community in Richmond for welcoming me to their Shabbat dinner. It was truly a lovely evening.
The honourable member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Saint-Cuthbert, in my riding, there's an airfield project that quite simply has no social acceptability and upon which the minister refuses to intervene. The people of Saint-Cuthbert and Saint-Norbert, elected officials from the area, local environmental groups, the Lanaudière UPA, and that of Lautrec are against this. A petition has gathered more than 1,500 signatures in a city with a population of 1,800. This is very significant significant, Mr. Speaker. Furthermore, Quebec's National Assembly passed a motion unanimously asking for a ministerial order for Saint-Hubert. This lack of social acceptability worries me, and in such a context, how could this project be in the public interest? It's quite simple. The minister should listen to the population and issue a decree on this project. And I would like to thank the citizens, the elected officials, and volunteers for their dedication on this file. The Honourable Member for Louis-Hébert. Mr. Speaker, as we're getting ready for the summer, I invite all of my colleagues to come to Quebec on July 7th. There are 10 days of music that await you, and if they're still not convinced, just think of what they'll miss. The Red Hot Chili Peppers, Sting, Peter Gabriel, Selena Gomez, the Ice Cream, the Lumineers, and the Dead Obies.
Conservative friends, Brad Paisley, will also be performing. As for my NDP friends, for $90 for an all-inclusive transferable pass, I think that's accessible, family-friendly, and in the spirit of sharing. Quant à mes amis du Bloc,
And for the Bloc, the Respectables will also be playing, and you might have seen them in 1973.
convinced still, I'll just talk to the whip. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Member for North Okanagan-Shuswap.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to recognize collective achievements in communities across the North Okanagan-Shuswap, the collective achievements of our high school graduates. Over the past and coming weeks, 18 high schools across the North Okanagan-Shuswap will see hundreds of graduates cross the stage, marking a successful achievement in their lives. These graduates will go on to great things, I'm sure. Whatever path they choose to take in the future, I rise today to wish them the best as they journey into a world full of opportunity. These graduates have reached a significant milestone with the help of parents, guardians, teachers, mentors, and peers, all of whom can share in the celebration and achievement of the graduates. To all the graduating students of the North Okanagan-Shuswap and everywhere else, congratulations on your achievement. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Brampton West.
Assalamu alaikum. Mr. Speaker, I rise today on the 9th day of Ramadan to acknowledge all of my Muslim brothers and sisters participating in the Holy Fast this month and to recognize the Brampton Islamic Center in Brampton West. During the month of Ramadan, Muslims fast from dawn until dusk, known as Psalm. This practice strengthens their understanding of self-discipline, self-reflection, sacrifice, and empathy for the less fortunate. For over a decade, the Brampton Islamic Center has enriched the spiritual and community lives of Muslims in Brampton. This mosque has contributed to local community groups, charities, and disaster relief efforts. Thank you for all that you do for our community. Ramadan Mubarak to all my Muslim brothers and sisters in Brampton West, in Canada, and around the world. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Dorval-Lachine-LaSalle. Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased to announce that a citizen of Lachine has been chosen as the new guard for the Phoenix Mercury professional basketball team. Nira Wellman-Fields is only the second Montrealer to be part of a WNBA team. After qualifying, number 21 started her career at the LaSalle Elementary Senior School before eventually becoming a member of the UCLA Bruins team, where she broke many records.
Also like to mention another amazing person, Faith Fields, Nira's mother. Faith raised 7 children by herself and taught them the importance of believing in yourself and working hard to achieve your goals. Mr. Speaker, if you ever find yourself in Phoenix, I'd recommend that you go catch a game, but don't go in August, as Nira will be busy in Brazil with the rest of our basketball team, working hard to bring us the goal. I wish her and all her fellow athletes good luck. Go Nira, go Mercury, go Canada!
The Honourable Member of Mégantic-l'Érable. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I speak on behalf of Xavier 7, Jordan 7, and Guillaume 4 from Thetford Mines, who decided to launch their own business and a company from Lac Mégantic, whose shareholders are Pauline 10, Martin 8, and Auguste 5. They'll be among 3,000 new entrepreneurs this Saturday to launch their own businesses on the big day for small business people in Quebec. It's a big day for children from the ages of 5 to 12 to allow them to develop a small business for a single day in their own neighborhood. Business plan, budgets, productions, and retail sales, they'll transform their passion into real cash. Whether it's lemonade stands, magic shows, bicycle washes, the youth business people will be working close to you. And you can find them at petitsentrepreneurs.ca. I salute the founders of these businesses, and I encourage all Quebecers and colleagues to encourage them, like Olivier Justine, Matisse, and others, who will be big business people someday.
Action Center.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise in the House to express my feeling about the horrific car accident. 3 teenage children of my riding, Daniel, Harry, Millie, and their grandfather, Gary Nelwell, were killed in a senseless act of a middle-aged impaired driver. I met Edward and Jennifer, the parents of the deceased children, just after the accident and after later stages. I am deeply touched by the emotional trauma to the family. Mr. Speaker, the Bramptonians are with the grieved Lake Neville family. I discussed the proposal with the Mayor and the city officials to dedicate a park so as to keep the memories of the children alive. This will be a strong social signal and will always remind the impaired drivers in the future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Beaches, East York.
Mr. Speaker, today is World Blood Donor Day, marked by the World Health Organization. I want to thank the hundreds of donors in Beaches, East York. This past Friday, over 200 of my neighbors signed up to give blood at the Beach United Church, including Amanda Tiernan Carpino, whose daughter Gigi was saved by a blood transfusion 3 years ago. Unfortunately, I am unable to thank the thousands of would-be donors across our country because of our continued policy effectively banning donations from gay and bisexual men, regardless of whether they are in a long-lasting monogamous relationship. I am proud of the Young Liberals of Canada for raising attention to this issue and of my government for including a commitment in our election platform to end the ban based on science. Other countries, Portugal, Italy, Poland, Mexico, Argentina, Chile, they base donor eligibility on a combination of risk factors, not sexual orientation alone, and Canada should do the same. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Portage Lisgar.
Mr. Speaker, this past Sunday, Winkler's own Eric Fair hoisted the Stanley Cup in victory after his team, the Pittsburgh Penguins, defeated the San Jose Sharks in the Stanley Cup Finals. Many Winklerites and Southern Manitobans were glued to their television sets the past weeks as they cheered Eric on. This marks the third time in 9 years that a Winkler native has won the Stanley Cup. Dustin Penner brought it home to Southern Manitoba in 2007 with the Ducks and again in 2012 with the LA Kings. What a record, Mr. Speaker. Clearly there's something very special in the water in the city of Winkler. During these playoffs, Eric truly became Winkler's son, as the city rallied around the boy who grew up playing hockey on the pond of the family farm. I'm sure his parents, Frank and Helen Fair, only dared to dream that their son would one day not only play in the NHL, but win the cup. So congratulations, Eric. All of Portage Lisgar, but especially the city of Winkler, is very proud of you.
The Honourable Member for Vaudreuil-Soulanges. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to rise today to let you know that Vaudreuil-Dorion has won the Culture 21 International Prize for its program, I Am, Je Suis. And they won against competition from cities like Rio, Cape Town, Dublin, and Lisbon.
Mr. Speaker, is due in part to inclusive multicultural events like the Mosaic Parade, which will be marching through the city this year on June 23rd. Over 800 citizens representing various cultural backgrounds and organizations will take part in dressing in vibrant and innovative costumes and sharing incredible music and dance from countless countries.
Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate all of those who worked on organizing the Mosaic Parade and the program I Am, Je Suis, particularly the Mayor of Vaudreuil and the members of the Municipal Council, several of whom are with us here today in Ottawa. Thank you very much. The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Mr. Speaker, The Huskies of Rouyn-Noranda have won their second President's Cup in Abitibi-Témiscamingue in 3 years. This trophy crowns them champions of the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. It was won by the Foreurs of Val-d'Or in 2014 and this year by the Huskies of Rouyn-Noranda, who were within 4 minutes of winning the Memorial Cup, which is the biggest prize in Canada. With this extraordinary season, I want to congratulate every member of the pack, as well as their trainer Gilles Bouchard and the entire team for their 72 wins. I also want to thank their president, Mr. Jacques Blais, who once again has headed up the organization that for this team. They'll be part of the history of all of Abitibi-Témiscamingue for this 20th anniversary win, and I want to thank all of their fans. Thank you to the Huskies for the wonderful show.
Member for Red Deer Lacombe.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today on behalf of the countless Albertans who have voiced their outrage over the infrastructure minister's astonishing renovation costs for his Sky Palace 2.0. Later tonight, we will be debating a motion to approve over $110 million in operating expenditures for the Office of the Minister of Infrastructure. The Infrastructure Minister spent a staggering $835,000 on renovations, furnishings, and furniture that the taxpayers should not be on the hook for. It's shocking and unacceptable the government continues to spend without regard for taxpayers. There are empty office spaces owned and leased by the government the minister could have occupied, and there are warehouses full of refurbished furniture the minister could have used to furnish his office. I call on the President of the Treasury Board to do the right thing and support our notice of opposition and remove the nearly $1 million of unneeded, lavish renovation money spent by the Minister of Infrastructure.
Member for Orleans.
Monsieur le Président, je voudrais aujourd'hui reconnaître et souligner les réalisations de mon homologue provincial pour Ottawa-Orléans, la députée provinciale.
The provincial MPP Marie-France Lalonde.
The Premier of Ontario and MPP Lalonde announced that the Ontario government would commit to fund 50% of 2 additional extensions, one to the Ottawa International Airport and another Trim Road in Orleans. I echo our government's previous commitment of $1 billion to this excellent project and pledge to consult with the Minister of Infrastructure and Communities, who sits very close to me, on the merits of a federal commitment to these 2 new extensions. Merci, Député Lalonde.
Thank you, Ms. Lalonde, and congratulations.
And Consumer Services et la Francophonie.
Oral questions, questions orales. Honorable Chef de l'Opposition.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
The European Union, the U.S. House of Representatives, the UK House of Commons, Hillary Clinton, John Kerry, and others have shown moral clarity by standing up and clearly stating what is obvious. ISIS crimes against religious minorities, women and children, gays and lesbians are genocide. Meanwhile, this Liberal government tries to hide behind weasel words and says it may constitute a genocide. It's totally shameful. If all our allies can find the moral resolve, why can't our Prime Minister?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as you know, Canada strongly condemns the atrocities committed by ISIL in the Middle East, and we stand with our allies in the fight against ISIL to make sure that they lose the capacity to take so many civilian lives. The fact is, we have formally requested of the United Nations Security Council to make a determination on this. We don't feel that politicians should be weighing in on this first and foremost. Determinations of genocide need to be made in an objective, responsible way. That's exactly what we have formally requested the international authorities weigh in on.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, this is a low point for the Liberal Party, and it's a dark spot on Canada's record as a defender of human rights. Liberal MPs actually said calling the crimes committed by ISIS a genocide would be a rush to judgment. Other Liberals said it doesn't matter because genocide is just a word. Well, Mr. Speaker, it's more than a word for the thousands of Yazidi girls being murdered and enslaved by ISIS. Will this Liberal government do the right thing and support this motion to declare ISIS crimes a genocide, yes or no?
Prime Minister.
As we have said, Mr. Speaker, we feel that determinations of genocide need to be done by objective measures and through proper research on the international stage. We will not trivialize the importance of the word genocide by not respecting formal engagements around that word. That's what has been done in the past. That needs to be done in the future. But I will take no lessons on playing politics from a government, from a former government that used footage of ISIL executions in an attack ad against me.
That's right.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, this isn't actually about him. That's right.
Mr. Speaker, how many people will have to be assassinated by ISIS before the Prime Minister recognizes that it is genocide? Canada has always defended human rights, but with this Prime Minister, we are now one of the only countries who have not declared this a genocide. It is shameful. Mr. Speaker, how far will ISIS have to go before they qualify its murderous actions as genocide? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, on the contrary, it's because we understand how important it is to respect and to allow all the legal and international weight on the word genocide that we're calling on the international community to make an objective determination. We do not want to play petty politics with these atrocities. That's exactly what we don't want, and Canadians expect this government to act appropriately. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
As young as 9 years old are being used as sex slaves by ISIS. On International Women's Day, I asked the Prime Minister if he would step up and ensure that these Yazidi girls get placed in Canada's joint sponsorship program, and he had no answer. Germany has now taken in 1,000 of these girls and given them safe havens. So I'm asking again for the third time, will the Prime Minister step up and follow Germany's lead and help these girls?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, under our government, we have worked very hard to reopen Canada to the world. The cuts to immigration that happened over the past 10 years, the cuts to refugee programs were disgraceful, and that's one of the reasons why Canadians asked for this government to restore Canada's place in the world as an open, welcoming country. That is exactly what we did with 25,000 Syrian refugees, and it's what I've asked our Minister of Immigration to work on in all similar situations.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, the Prime Minister still, after 3 questions, doesn't even understand this issue. These girls are not refugees. They are not considered refugees. They're languishing in camps as displaced people. But we have a special program that he has power to use to bring these girls to Canada. So I ask him again, when is he going to take action and help these girls?
Order. Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Again,
Order.
Speaker, the previous government did a lot to diminish our capacity to welcome in people from around the world. And the fact is that we are working very hard.
I appreciate the efforts of the Conservative whip to get his colleagues to quiet down. Most members in all parties are able to hear things they don't like without reacting, and I encourage members to all do that so I don't have to mention their riding names. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The fact of the matter is we're working very hard to restore Canada's place in the world as a country that welcomes in vulnerable peoples. That's what we were able to demonstrate when Canadians stepped up in an extraordinary way for 25,000 Syrian refugees. That's exactly what our Minister of Immigration is working very, very hard on to restore after all the cuts the previous government made to immigration.
Député d'Outremont.
Honourable Member for Outremont.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals' broken promise to our veterans is shameful. After serving our country and making such sacrifices, veterans are still being forced to fight in court to recognize their rights. We've also learned that the Liberals have just denied care to a 94-year-old veteran on a technicality when there are empty beds ready to be used. New government, same disgraceful behaviour. When will the Prime Minister stop fighting veterans in court, and when will he provide them with the services that he promised?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, after 10 years of a government that shamefully neglected our veterans, we are proud that we are working very hard to restore the kinds of services and the kinds of respect that veterans have earned through their incredible service to our country, to its values, and indeed to the world. We will continue to endeavour to restore the kinds of services they deserve, and we look forward to working collaboratively collaboratively with them to ensure the kind of support that they have earned.
Député d'Outremont.
The honourable member for Outremont.
Prime Minister, along with all his Liberal colleagues, voted in this House never to repeat the mistakes of the Conservatives, to respect the rights of our veterans, and that is another broken promise.
It's shameful. Not only has the government broken its promise by taking our veterans to court, but we have learned today that the Liberal government has denied care to a 94-year-old veteran. Can the Prime Minister explain to us why he is refusing care to this veteran who so richly deserves it? Care that he promised to deliver to him. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. After 10 years of a government who neglected our veterans, I am proud to be part of a team that recognizes our solemn obligation to support our veterans, to help them in their difficult times, and to show them that we respect their services. That is what we were working on very hard. Our Minister of Veterans Affairs is collaborating with the veterans groups to ensure that we deliver them the services that they deserve. The Honourable Member for Outremont.
Stop blaming the Conservatives and start respecting his own promises.
According to the Liberals, the problem is that it is impossible to decriminalize marijuana because it would be then sold illegally. I have some news for them. That's happening already. The only thing that would change is that tens of thousands of young Canadians would no longer have criminal records. And you know what, Mr. Speaker? That is a good thing. What does the Prime Minister not get about this? Why does he continue to ensure that young Canadians are being stuck with criminal records? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the NDP members have shown that they do not understand the issue of marijuana because decriminalizing it would give a legal stream of revenue to street gangs, to organized crime criminal groups, and to arms traffickers. We have put forward a proposal to legalize marijuana in order to protect our young people by making it more difficult for them to get access to marijuana and to eliminate streams of revenue for criminal organizations. That's what we promised to do, and that's what we're going to do. The Honourable Member for Outremont.
Minister, it's a classic case of do as I say, not as I do. The government's trying to argue that if we decriminalize marijuana, there may be some who will sell it illegally. This just in, that's what's happening now, Mr. Speaker. Do Liberals really think that they can tell everybody in Canada to stop smoking dope until they finally get around to legalizing it? That just doesn't make any sense. If the Prime Minister is serious about moving toward legalization, why is his government continuing to hand out tens of thousands of criminal records to young Canadians? That's wrong, and they can change it easily.
The Prime Minister.
Legalizing marijuana is done with two things in mind. It's done to protect young people from having the easy access that they have right now to marijuana, and it's about reducing the capacity of criminal organizations, street gangs, and gun runners to make incredible profits off of that marijuana. Until we bring in a legalized, controlled regime, marijuana remains illegal. That is the law of the land. That is what we're working on changing, but we will change it to protect our young people and protect our communities.
Honourable Member for Lac Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is now studying a new way of taxing the Canadian public. We would call it a carbon tax mechanism. But you know what, Mr. Speaker? This new tax is going to have an impact on everything that our Canadian families purchase. I would like the Prime Minister to tell the public how much more it is going to cost us to buy the things we need. The Honourable Minister of the Environment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Unlike the opposition, we know that the environment and the economy go hand in hand.
The party not recognizing the role that markets play when it comes to reducing emissions. They should stand with the Premier of Manitoba, who said, the Conservative Premier of Manitoba, said in the speech from the throne that the new Conservative government is committed to climate action that will include carbon pricing that fosters emission reductions, retains investment capital, and stimulates new innovation in clean energy, business, and jobs. That's the right thing to do. It's the efficient thing to do.
Député de Lac Saint-Jean. Honourable Member for Lac Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker. On the contrary, we have proved that the economy does go hand in hand with the environment. We are the only ones who reduced greenhouse gas emissions without charging new taxes. That's just empty rhetoric we're hearing from them, Mr. Speaker. It is clear in their response. We want to hear how much more it is going to cost Canadian families to buy groceries and other essentials. The Honourable Minister of the Environment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canadians know that we must reduce our greenhouse gas emissions in order to grow our economy sustainably.
Leader. The Ontario Conservative leader and former MP Patrick Brown. Climate change is a fact. It is a threat. It is man-made. We have to do something about it, and that something includes a price on carbon. He may also want to listen to his colleagues. The member from Wellington, Halton Hills, in launching his Conservative leadership bid, said that on the issue of climate change, I think it's clear that carbon pricing has arrived in Canada.
Now, member for Milton.
I find it very interesting that the Minister of the Environment is actually confirming in the House today that the Liberals plan on introducing a carbon tax. That goes with the broken promise on the small business tax. That also goes with the CPP tax that they're going to be putting on small businesses. Mr. Speaker, the Finance Minister also confirmed that he's going to be introducing a carbon tax that will eventually increase the price of, well, everything that we pay for. Small business is the backbone of our economy. 95% of Canadians work in small business. When will the Minister of Finance stop his attack on small businesses?
Honourable Minister of Environment.
Mr. Speaker, I'm quite happy to continue repeating all of the people that support a price on carbon. But maybe we should go to industry. So we have here Pierre Graton, who's the President and CEO of the Mining Association of Canada. Speaking on behalf of one of Canada's largest industries, he has stated that they support carbon pricing and that it represents the most effective and efficient means of driving emissions reductions and making real progress in the global fight against climate change. Maybe it's time for the Conservatives to get with the program and do what everyone else is calling for, which is to take climate change seriously and put a price on emissions.
The honourable member for Milton.
What is the price?
Mr. Speaker, let's get some facts straight here. Canada has one of the highest household debt ratios in the world. This government is planning on introducing a CPP hike. They're planning on introducing a carbon tax. Yet they were elected on the notion that they were going to bring fairness for taxation to the middle class. How is this possibly fairness for the middle class? This is nothing more than taking it out of one pocket and putting it in another. And at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, it's Canadian families that are going to hurt because of this. When will the minister admit that all of these Liberal tax schemes are making...
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
But let me remind this House and Canadian, Mr. Speaker, this is the government who reduced taxes for middle-class Canadians, Mr. Speaker. And one of the first things we did, Mr. Speaker, is we want Canadians to retire in dignity with security. One of the first things that the Minister of Finance did was to meet with his provincial counterparts to look at CPP enhancement. And that's what he's going to be doing in a couple of weeks. And, Mr. Speaker, that's what Canadian wants. That's what we're going to pursue, security retirement for Canadians in this country.
Member for Regina Capel.
Well, Mr. Speaker, maybe the Environment Minister doesn't realize that when the market imposes a fee, it's a cost, but when the government does it, it's a tax. And while carbon taxes may be lucrative sources of revenue for politicians, they don't actually do anything to reduce emissions. The Finance Minister and his cabinet colleagues are scheming to impose a carbon tax on the middle-class workers who make their living in the oil and gas sector. The Liberals see that the energy sector is hurting and they want to kick it while it's down. This cold-hearted plan will only delay the recovery. When will the Liberals stop their mean-spirited attack against the hard-working middle-class workers in the energy sector?
The Minister of Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We understand that the middle class is working hard. We also understand that we need to take action on climate change. We know that the lowest cost way of reducing emissions and tackling carbon pollution is by putting a price on it. But once again, let me go to Preston Manning. Conservatives profess to believe in markets, so why don't Conservatives major on how to harness markets to the environmental conversation and make it their signature contribution? Mark Cameron, former policy advisor to Prime Minister Stephen Harper. As most free market economists
The Honourable Minister knows that we don't refer to members in this House by their names, but by their titles. The Honourable Member for Regina Capel.
Speaker, only to a Liberal would increasing taxes result in lower costs. It makes no sense. But if they are so keen on helping the middle class, Premier Wall has an idea that will put Canadians back to work. Across the oil sector, like countless decommissioned oil and gas wells. Out-of-work Canadians in the energy sector have the skills to clean up these abandoned wells. This is a practical idea that will actually clean up the environment. So instead of raising taxes, will the Liberals adopt this common sense idea and help create jobs?
Minister of Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I had the pleasure to go to Saskatchewan, where I met with my counterpart, the Environment Minister there. We had a great discussion about how we could reduce emissions and we could tackle climate change working together. I went and visited carbon capture and storage and looking at new technologies. I talked to the agricultural sector about how they could reduce emissions. It seems that the only party that doesn't understand the need to reduce emissions is a party opposite.
Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte. Mr. Speaker, the government seems to be all over the map with its bill on medical aid in dying. After having assured us that C-14 did comply with the Supreme Court ruling, the Minister of Justice now tells us that her bill doesn't have to comply. It only has to comply with the Charter. And yet, the Supreme Court's ruling was based on the Charter. So, what is this new messaging? Is it because the government has finally understood that Bill C-14 does not comply either with Carter or with the Charter?
Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was pleased to release an addendum to the explanatory paper that we released previously with respect to Bill C-14 to provide additional information to parliamentarians who are considering this important piece of legislation. In considering very carefully the Carter decision, Bill C-14 does comply with the Carter decision. Carter decision stated that a complete prohibition on medical assistance in dying is unconstitutional and left it up to Parliament to craft a regime to put in place medical assistance in dying in this country, and that's exactly what we've done in this legislation.
Member for Victoria.
The Minister of Justice insisted Bill C-14 complied with the Carter decision, but courts in Alberta and Ontario disagreed. She argued the bill was constitutional, but then Canada's leading expert on constitutional law said that wasn't so. Now the minister's changing her tune again, saying the bill doesn't have to comply with the Supreme Court of Canada ruling, forgetting, it seems, that that case was based on Section 7 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Mr. Speaker, why is the minister trying to ram through a law that, according to the Supreme Court of Canada decision, takes away Canadians' charter rights?
Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I completely reject all of the questions or the premise of the questions that have been proposed. All of the discussions and the considerations by the Court of Appeal in Alberta and other were considering personal exemptions with respect to medical assistance in dying. They were not considering Bill C-14. The Supreme Court of Canada rendered its decision in Carter. We are complying with the Carter decision in doing our jobs and putting in place a complex framework for medical assistance in dying in this country. And the question is this bill constitutional? And I submit that it is.
Member for Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In today's National Post, Laval professor Stephen Gordon notes, quote, much of the argument against using a referendum to choose an electoral system uses technocratic language. The topic is too complicated, ordinary voters won't understand the issues, and the possibility that the voters will make the objectively incorrect vote is just too great a risk to run. Now, Professor Gordon concludes, the only reliable way of finding out what Canadians think about electoral change is to ask them. The opposite point of view. Academics agree with the media consensus that has already been expressed often in this country there ought to be a referendum. Doesn't the government agree?
The Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, we will be asking Canadians. That's what the all-party committee made up of members of this House. That is the role and its function. It's up to all 338 members to ensure that their constituents' voices and needs are reflected in this process.
The Honourable Member for Richmond North Athabasca. Mr. Speaker, We are very concerned today. Imagine the members have not even been named here in the House to the Electoral Reform Committee. We learned yesterday that the Liberal Party is organizing town hall consultations for which people have to pay, and this is to fundraise. Mr. Speaker, is that what transparency is, and the openness that the Liberals promised? Shouldn't they be doing consultations in a different way? When will the minister listen to all the analysts and the public? When will she say that there will be a referendum so that the Canadian public can express itself?
Democratic institutions.
Firstly, Mr. Speaker, it's my understanding that the event the member is referring to is asking for a voluntary donation to help cover some of the costs of the event, such as room rental and light refreshments. That said, Mr. Speaker, I'm encouraged that Canadians are engaged in this conversation, and I look forward to all the ways that the MPs in this place will go out of their way to hear from their constituents.
Kevin. The honourable member for Banff Airdrie.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I've never heard such a lame excuse in all my life. They keep claiming that they're listening to Canadians on electoral reform and that they won't proceed with any changes without the broad buy-in of the Canadian people. However, it turns out that what they meant by buy-in was that Canadians are going to have to buy in. This isn't about filling Liberal coffers, Mr. Speaker. It's democracy. And every Canadian deserves a say without having to pay to get in the door. So will the Liberals actually listen to Canadians and give each and every Canadian a direct say in a referendum? Yes.
The Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, I can assure all Canadians that our government is acting to remove as many barriers as possible and ensure full participation of all Canadians in this important conversation. I urge the member opposite to bring forward more constructive dialogue into this debate.
The honourable member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Monsieur le Président, c'est clair que...
Mr. Speaker, it is clear that the minister does not understand that this is a conflict of interest for politicians to choose their own electoral system, and that is why other jurisdictions have set up royal commissions and civic assemblies, followed by a referendum. Why does this minister want to put us in a position of conflict of interest? Why doesn't she allow millions of Canadians to make their own choice in a referendum?
Democratic institutions.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure if the member opposite understands that the role of an MP is to represent their constituents in this place. In that vein, Mr. Speaker, I once again encourage all members to make sure that the voices of their constituents...
Order. I'm having trouble hearing the answer to the question. I shouldn't have any trouble. Let's all listen carefully, please. The Honourable Minister of Democratic Institution has finished, I guess, her answer. The Honourable Member for Saskatoon West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The previous Conservative government attacked collective bargaining and weakened worker protection for the public service. In January, the Minister of Labour tabled a bill to repeal some of the Conservatives' anti-worker legislation. But 6 months later, and the bill is languishing. It is not enough just to meet with public servants and pay lip service to undoing Conservative damage. When will the Liberals stop stalling and bring Bill C-4 back to the House?
Here. The Honourable Minister of Employment.
I want to thank my honourable member for the question and indicate that we're all anxious to get Bill C-4 through the whole parliamentary system. And in fact, members have had an opportunity to speak to the bill. It's gone to committee. I had an opportunity to present. We're looking forward to actually bringing it back to the House, voting it, and making it a new law for Canadians.
The honourable member for Jonquière. Mr. Speaker, the minister's response is not satisfactory. Right now, C4 is in parliamentary limbo. We don't even know where it is. They've forgotten many things in it, too. For example, it doesn't even restore occupational health and safety provisions. The preceding government relentlessly attacked worker rights. The Liberals are quick to make promises to workers, but not so quick to deliver on them. Will the Minister of Labour finally take action and restore the health and safety provisions of C4 in order to protect Canadian workers?
Employment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. as everyone in the House knows, that we've had several very important national issues to discuss, debate, and vote on. Bill C-4 was introduced second to the budget bill itself. Shows an indication of the priority that our government has to restore fair and balanced labour legislation. Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Sudbury. Innovation drives growth and allows Canada to be more competitive. In my riding of Sudbury, companies have increased their productivity and accelerated their growth by adjusting their innovation strategy. Can the Minister of Innovation, Science and Economic Development tell the House what the government has done to stimulate innovation in Canada? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for Sudbury for this question and for his interest in promoting innovation. Our government always said that we needed an approach to build a more inclusive and innovative Canada. I therefore have great pleasure in announcing today the first step toward a more innovative Canada. We've invited Canadians to tell us how to do innovation better and make it a Canadian value.
Well, Mr. Speaker, later today, this innovation minister will outline the Liberals' latest innovation scheme, but there's one problem. The event is being hosted by Canada 2020. Now, this is the same group that hosted the pay-to-play trip to Washington. And it just so happens that the leaders of Canada 2020 are deeply connected to the Liberal Party, and they also happen to own a lobbying firm which happens to be registered to lobby this minister. So can the minister explain how this is not textbook cronyism and a gross conflict of interest?
Here, here. The Minister of Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, I'm so glad the member opposite raised the issue of innovation. You know, they've been asking a lot of questions around agreement on internal trade, and we believe that both these issues were addressed today when we talked about our innovation agenda, Mr. Speaker. This agenda is making key investments to grow our economy, to help the middle class. It's about providing future growth opportunities for companies to not only grow but scale up. It's an opportunity for us to make key investments that make sure we have a better future for our children and grandchildren, Mr. Speaker.
A member for Red Deer Lacombe.
Well, running their events through a non-profit that also happens to be run by lobbyists is quite innovative, Mr. Speaker. So for a government that says it's dedicated to inclusive growth, it's quite shocking to see how many exclusive pay-to-play events it promotes. Today, the Liberals have outsourced the innovation agenda to their Liberal friends at Canada 2020. And not only that, but Canada 2020 controls the invite list for this so-called government announcement. So there is, in fact, nothing public or inclusive about the Liberal innovation agenda. So how is the minister protecting the taxpayer by granting exclusive access of a $2 billion policy to well-connected Liberal insiders?
Good question. The Minister of Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, today I had the opportunity, along with my colleagues from science and small business, to talk about our innovation agenda. We did a press conference, and in that press conference, we outlined key themes to growing the economy. And we made these announcements on top of the commitment we already demonstrated in our budget to grow the economy. $800 million for clusters, $2 billion for research institutions and our post-secondary institutions, $500 million for a broadband connectivity agenda, Mr. Speaker. The bottom line is we have an innovation agenda that's about growing the economy and creating jobs, and we made that to the public.
Honourable member for Lévis-Lobinière. Mr. Speaker, Canada 2020 is on the front lines again. We understand the Minister of Innovation's strategy was developed in close cooperation with this organization, which is everything except nonpartisan. It shares offices with the lobbying firm Blue Sky. One of the leaders of Blue Sky was a Liberal strategist during the last election campaign. Can the minister explain how long lobbyists have had both hands in this government's innovation strategy and why it accepts this conflict of interest? The Honourable Minister of Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, our government believes in a very open and transparent process should be put in place when it comes to dealing with the public on the innovation agenda. I met with hundreds of CEOs, small business CEOs, large CEOs, did numerous roundtables, had many engagement opportunities, and today we announced a robust innovation agenda that talks about key themes to grow the economy, to bet on talent, to bet on innovation, to make sure we have a process that includes everyone. We have a whole of government approach, we have a whole society approach. It's about finding solutions to problems. It's about growing the economy. And I'm glad members opposite are talking about this very important priority of this government.
The honourable member for Lévis-Lobinière. Mr. Speaker, the launch of the Minister's Innovation Program is under the control of partisan and political interests. Just a few days after the announcement of the event, it was sold out. Mr. Speaker, once again, Canadians will find the very close ties between the Liberal government and lobbyists very concerning. Why does the minister accept that his policy be used in this way, and why is he giving privileged access for this policy to the tune of $2 billion to Liberal friends close to power? The Honourable Minister of Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, I already outlined the policy objectives earlier today in a news conference in a very open and transparent way. We made sure that we engage Canadians from coast to coast to coast. And when you talk about the innovation agenda, we outlined that during the campaign, a campaign that talked about growing the economy, a campaign that talked about investing in the middle class. Then we reinforced that with making significant investments in the budget. And today, again, was our ongoing commitment to the innovation agenda, because we understand that in order to innovate and grow, we need to invest in people, and that was the message we shared with Canadians today.
The Honourable Member for Sherbrooke. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 90% of Canadians hold the opinion that genetically modified foods should be labelled compulsorily. Today, I tabled Bill C-291 to do exactly that. This is far from excessive. 65 other jurisdictions, including Vermont, have already made compulsory labeling of genetically modified foods. Will the government support my bill and allow Canadians to make an enlightened choice about their food?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate my colleague's question, and that's why I've asked the Agriculture Committee to explore what steps should be taken to best inform the public about new products involving genetically modified animals. Mr. Speaker, in this country, there is a clear and strict process for evaluating genetically modified products, and also our government continues and will follow a science-based strategy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Hamilton Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, the chair of the Public Accounts Committee tabled Report 11, Chapter 1, Implementing Gender-Based Analysis of the Fall 2015 Report of the Auditor General of Canada. In this unanimous report, our committee recommends that by April 1st, 2017, gender-based analysis be made a mandatory requirement for all federal departments and agencies. Mr. Speaker, given that both government and opposition members support this report, will the government commit today to implement the committee's recommendation on mandatory gender-based analysis?
The Honourable Minister for the Status of Women.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for his question. Gender-based analysis is a very important tool that this government uses to make sure that we embed gender equality in all of our legislation. We will be reviewing the report, and we will be reviewing the Standing Committee's report as well, and we'll be happy to report back to the House when we've had a chance to do so. Thank you.
For Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals broke their promise to Canadians for fair and open competition to replace our CF-18s. Then they misled Canadians by creating an imaginary capability gap. And now the Liberals refuse to invest the $400 million that we budgeted to extend the life of our CF-18s. When will the Defence Minister tell the Prime Minister to quit playing politics with our troops, with Canadian workers, and with Canadian taxpayers?
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Defence.
Mr. Speaker, the government is committed to replacing the CF-18s. They were originally acquired in 1982 and by now have had several life extensions. We are approaching a capability gap, which we mean to remedy. It is a pity, Mr. Speaker, that the honourable member doesn't adopt the former Minister McKay's views, which was that I regret not making the final purchase of the aircraft? Absolutely. Its costs and capabilities, however, forced the halt to the process.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the decision to unilaterally exclude a company from an open and transparent process is a perfect example of the Liberals' double standard. Giving a sole source contract only serves the Liberal interest. This decision is not good for our men and women in uniform, for the aerospace industry, for Canadian jobs, and for Canadian taxpayers. Can the Minister of Economic Development tell us What is the economic advantage for Canada of acquiring the Super Hornet?
Mr. Speaker, as I said previously, the replacement of the CF-18 is an absolute priority for this government. Regrettably, we've lost about 5 years in that process, as is indicated by the previous minister. And following that, Mr. Speaker, the analysis of the industrial benefits as to various options is still open and is still ongoing, but we mean to close this capability gap.
The honourable member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Mr. Speaker, Liberal after Liberal have gotten up over the past few weeks to defend the Infrastructure Minister and Sky Palace 2.0. Initially, he tried to defend his actions by claiming that this was simply the Liberals doubling the infrastructure budget. Apparently, only Liberal ministers need to apply. Does the minister feel embarrassed to note that his colleagues are being forced to support his spending almost $1 million on fridges and flat screens?
Honourable Minister of Infrastructure and Communities.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the expenditures that the honourable member is referring to is for 32 staff members. 32 staff members, Mr. Speaker. And the fridges and the furniture and the paintings they're talking about, the only painting hanging on my office wall is the map of Canada, Mr. Speaker. Map of Canada. As they well know, Mr. Speaker, that we did not have a dedicated minister and deputy minister before.
The honourable member for South Shore, St. Margaret's.
Mr. Speaker, a thriving marine transportation sector is very important to my constituents, and there is a will in my riding to support local port ownership. Local port ownership means opens up new commercial possibilities that allow port facilities to reach their full potential. Can the Minister of Transport please update this House on recent developments with the Port of Liverpool in my riding of South Shore St. Margaret's?
Minister of Transport.
Well, that's a great question from my colleague from South Shore St. Margaret's. We in this government believe that local stakeholders are much better positioned to take over the remaining Transport Canada-owned ports because they're more sensitive to the local needs. So we're delighted that the province of Nova Scotia has decided to take over the Port of Liverpool. This will be good for the community of Liverpool, for the Port of Liverpool. It'll create jobs. It's great for their marine sector. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Central Okanagan, Similkameen, Nicola.
Mr. Speaker, every time I stand up to ask the government about free the beer, the minister starts talking about the agreement on internal trade. The Wynne Liberals have said publicly that alcohol will not be part of any new agreement. Why is the minister misleading Canadians on a new agreement on internal trade when he knows full well that it will not free the beer?
Honourable Minister of Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, our government supports open markets, and that's why we're working in collaboration with our provincial and territorial counterparts to talk about alcohol and other areas of interest to make sure that we reduce barriers and harmonize regulations. It's a priority for this government because we understand the importance of having free trade within Canada. It's good for our economy, it's good for small businesses, it's good for the consumers, and this will remain a priority as we continue to grow the economy.
The honourable member for Disnethi, Mississippi, Churchill River.
Mr. Speaker, Saskatchewan's Black Lake First Nation is struggling to teach students in a school that's bursting at the seams. 440 children from K to 12 are crowded into Father Port Memorial Dene School, a school built only for 350 students. The Liberals promised $2.6 billion for First Nations education, but so far they have failed to deliver. Will this government commit today to give the Black Lake First Nation the funding to build the much-needed school these children deserve?
For Indigenous and Northern Affairs.
I thank the member for the question, and I too am excited and anticipating the rollout of Budget 2016, which, with the generous commitment to school infrastructure, will benefit so many First Nations and have children allowed to learn in dignity like all other Canadian children.
Member for Hamilton West, Ancaster Dundas.
Mr. Speaker, as the Member of Parliament for Hamilton West Ancaster Dundas, I know that our province has a diverse ethnic population. Seniors living here require support and resources that are tailored to meet their individual needs. Most at-risk seniors are those who live alone, have disabilities or poor health, have low income, have language barriers, or have reduced access to services. Can the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development inform the House on what the government is doing to help support seniors in Hamilton?
Well, Minister of Social Development.
Mr. Speaker, let me first thank my two colleagues from Hamilton East, Stony Creek and Hamilton West, Ancaster, London, for their very hard work in support of Hamilton residents. Our government understands the importance of supporting seniors who are, or may be, at risk of becoming socially isolated, and this is why I had the pleasure with my colleagues to announce last weekend $2 million to 7 organizations under the Hamilton Seniors Isolation Population Impact Plan. This will help support Hamilton's capacity to reach, to identify and connect socially isolated seniors. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For Calgary Forest Lawn.
Thank you, Monsieur le Président. The Official Development Assistance Accountability Act of 2003, first proposed by a Liberal, states specifically that aid is for poverty reduction, human rights, and promotion of democracy. The Prime Minister's envoy to the United Nations recently declared that foreign aid will form the backbone of Canada's bid to win a seat in the UN Security Council. Is the Prime Minister's envoy not aware that they are breaking a Canadian law with the use of aid money to buy a UN Security Council seat?
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of International Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our government is incredibly proud of the international assistance we provide to countries and people around the world. As the member knows, since coming to government, the Prime Minister mandated the Minister of International Development et la Francophonie to refocus Canada's development assistance on the most poor and the most vulnerable, including in fragile states, and that is exactly what we're going to do, and we are proud of the work that we are doing around the world. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Montcalm. Mr. Speaker, this morning I tabled the petition signed by 25,000 Quebecers who say no to Energy East. In another electronic petition, 267 Quebecers say they're in favour of Energy East. So thousands more Quebecers are against Energy East. Energy East is not and will never be socially acceptable in Quebec. So what obscure interests justify the government's hesitation to say no? Is it the siren song of Irving from the Maritimes?
On January the 27th, the Minister of the Environment and Climate Change and I announced a set of principles that will govern the review of major projects. One of those major projects is Energy East. The National Energy Board will spend 21 months reviewing the project, during which time all Canadians, mayors, premiers, leaders of the opposition, members of Parliament, Canadians at large, will have every opportunity to express their view.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Mr. Speaker, the statements by the Minister of Health are ridiculous. She announced that a 3% increase in transfer payments is plenty, as if the population wasn't aging. And to heck with federal-provincial negotiations, we know they're fake anyway. Even worse, she wants to change the global transfer of 13 individual agreements to be able to tell Quebec what to do about health care, even though Ottawa knows nothing about this field. Can the Minister of Finance, who has the upper hand on transfer payment, call his colleague to order?
Of Health.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, during the Minister of Health meeting in January, the federal, provincial, and territorial ministers of health agreed to put forward common priorities for health care. I confirmed our commitment in cooperation with the provinces and territories, including Quebec, in order to reach a funding agreement that provides for bilateral agreements. The provinces and territories have different circumstances which will be taken into consideration in these bilateral agreements.
It being 3:04 p.m., pursuant to order made on Thursday, June 9, 2016, the House will now proceed to the taking of the deferred recorded division on the motion of Ms. Ambrose relating to the business of supply. A point of order, the member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, point of privilege. The Minister of Innovation, Science and Economic Development has just talked about introducing a new innovation consultation, and he said he did it in an open and transparent way. And Mr. Speaker, that's not at all true, and this is the first I've heard of it, and I'm not sure how I'm supposed to fulfill my role as the critic for science and find out if that's a good process if I'm not even invited to this Canada 2020 Liberal-only event, Mr. Speaker.
I do not have notice of a question of privilege, and this sounds a bit like debate, but if the member wants to come back and wants to send me notice of a question of privilege seriously, that's certainly open to her. Call on the members.